Yeah, I know I've already made 2 videos in the past reviewing war games, and this is going to be a 3rd one in a row, so I'm just gonna get to the point. Airship Assault is a Roblox war game by Roblox development group Project Combat. It takes historical inspiration from interwar period technology, though borrowing some elements from World War I and World War II era technology, to create a somewhat niche atmosphere and gameplay on the Roblox platform. Its biggest inspiration isn't drawn from any real-life historical source though, but rather an old Roblox game known as Zeppelin Wars. I haven't played Zeppelin Wars a lot, but the times I did, I mostly remember it being very fast-paced, chaotic, confusing, but ultimately really fun. Games with utter chaos is something that I'm likely to enjoy, as you would have seen when I was praising Scorched Earth's building mechanics and Guts and Black Powder head-to gameplay in the past. Like with Airship Assault, Zeppelin Wars is about warfare on top of these elaborate airships completely armed to the teeth with heavy cannons. Also, for the record, some of the footage took place during the 2024 Halloween event. I didn't like the event, so I'm not going to talk about it. Anyways, let's get into the video. Airship Assault is a very simple game. On most game modes, you're given 3 classes: crewman, raider, and pilot. Since this game revolves around aerial warfare, for the most part, all of these classes involve managing airships in one way or another. Before I move on to the gameplay proper, here's what each of the 3 classes do. Crewmen are meant to take care of the team's respective airships and stop raiders and pilots from destroying the airship, either by repairing damaged components with wrenches or just shooting the attackers. They usually come equipped with an arsenal of defensive light machine guns, rifles, and shotguns that spawn closest to anti-air turrets or cannons to help ward off pilots or, in most cases, attack the other airship. Raiders are the most direct attackers who infiltrate airships with gliders, sometimes parachutes, and have access to explosives and the more aggressive submachine guns. Their sole purpose is to destroy the enemy team's airship through whatever means necessary, be it blowing up infrastructure such as pillars or destroying an airship's boiler room. They can also use various grenades, from a regular frag grenade, a stick impact grenade, a smoke grenade, or just straight up a Molotov firebomb.
Oh, they're going to have to glue you back together in hell!
Finally, the pilot can spawn in biplanes, tasked with destroying the airship's other components like engines to slow down the enemy team's airship or even target walls to create big gaping holes that allows raiders to glide into. Teammates can also spawn inside of a pilot's plane and, depending on the class, will either be given a parachute or glider to safely land somewhere. Like most multiplayer shooters, you're expected to grind a lot to unlock the next thing. Airship Assault is no different. Some things are level locked or currency locked, so it takes some time to get better weapons in the game, though that's kind of a moot point since some weapons are basically shit compared to the ones you start with. You gain EXP by killing enemies, completing objectives, winning or losing a match, or by unlocking something called a lower entry, which I will explain later. EXP gain isn't universal and is similar to Frontline Corellia's progression system, which was taken from Red Orchestra 2, where each class has their own level and EXP bar. As for currencies, there's 2 types: bonds and victory points. Victory points isn't actually the name of the specific currency, but since there's no official name of it, I'm just gonna call it that because fuck you, having to call them by the respective factions is annoying. Moving on, bonds is what you get by leveling up. The amount of bonds you earn depends on which level you're on, so if you get to level 2, you get 2 bonds, and if you reach level 30, you get 30 bonds. Then there's the victory points, which I mentioned earlier. You only get this currency by winning, and usually you get team-specific victory points on the team you win with. Gremlin has crowns, Valkyrie has marks, and Redamura has seals. Some equipment or weapons are locked behind victory points and are team specific. These are, thankfully, not all too common, since if most of the equipment in the game was locked behind victory points, grinding out team victories would make me severely depressed, unless it's Redamura. As a bonus, you can earn bonds and EXP pretty easily if you do something called directives. That's just a fancy name for daily quests and usually boosts your progression pretty quickly. The progression system also allows players to unlock more cosmetics as they level up, though most cosmetics are locked behind game passes, so I don't even know if that matters. When it comes to airships themselves, they're these massive flying fortresses that come armed to the teeth with cannons and turrets with the express purpose of nuking the other team out of existence. Both teams must pilot their ships independently with a hopefully competent player captain who can enact focuses that gives a temporary boost to the whole team, such as faster turret reload, better crewman repair, or just speeding up the airship. As far as I know, there's 2 ways to get rid of an airship. The first and most popular way is to infiltrate an airship as a raider, then destroying the 2 boilers that sit inside of the lower compartments. While this is arguably the fastest and easiest way, quote unquote, the boiler room is also right next to where crewmen and raiders spawn as default in the airship, making this a very difficult place to attack. Alternatively, if you're a massive no-life player like I am, grind pilot to level 10 then spam rockets on the boiler room walls to expose the boiler so that raiders can fly into it. The second but longer way is to land on the airship's deck where the defending crewmen are usually running around on and place explosives on the pillars. This takes a while since these pillars are tough and easily reachable by defenders, but destroying all 6 pillars will detach the blimp from the airship's platform, instantly destroying the enemy airship. For game modes, while this is the norm for Airship Assault, there are some that mixes up the formula of the game in major ways. The main 4 game modes in the game currently running are, firstly, Assault, where 2 teams, mostly Greenland and Volgray, Britain and Germany. Firstly, Assault, where 2 teams, mostly Greenland and Volgray, aka Britain and Germany, have to destroy each other's airships before theirs go down first. Secondly, Ambush, where Greenland's airship is now controlled by an AI-driven captain that flies through a tight canyon while Volgray spawns in the side of a mountain and must destroy Greenland's airship before it reaches the end of the canyon. Greenland loses access to raiders for this game mode. Thirdly, Control, which is basically an overly complicated King of the Hill game mode where both teams must capture a fortress in the center of the map. Both teams' airships are replaced with transport airships that holds a tank, which will respawn after it gets destroyed. Whoever's holding the fort can also have the chance to spawn tanks for themselves, but because of how slow these are, they're not practical. Finally, there's IO, which is the only game mode in the game to have a new team entirely called Redamura. This is similar to other games' attack-defend modes where Volgray must defend a series of objectives from Redamura, who attacks the capture points one by one. This is also the only game mode where airships are unavailable and there's a spawn limit to both teams' pilot class. This is not including the AI-driven Greenland airship that supplies Redamura with tanks after reaching a certain point. Of note is that for Control and IO, players can get a new item called a shovel to build obstacles, defenses, or 10 spawn points. You can alternatively build an HMG or heavy machine gun, which is pretty good at annihilating players and decent at taking down planes. Something that you might notice while you play is that you will eventually reach a point where you unlock lore entries, which nets you a pretty nifty 5000 EXP bonus to the class you're playing as. This is something that is ultimately irrelevant to the game, but fun fact, Centaura isn't the only Roblox game that has world building lore. Shocking, I know. These are usually just tidbits of Airship Assault lore that explores the setting of the game in usually inconsequential and ultimately trivial ways, but entries are locked behind tasks that you must complete, such as killing enemies with a specific weapon, winning on a map multiple times, winning as a specific team, or completing a secret lore entry that requires more thinking into figuring out how to unlock those entries, such as literally diving into an active volcano. This was a pretty short section, all things considered. Now, how's the game itself? I'm going to be honest here, while it's undeniable that I like this game and spent a lot of time playing this, mostly for the express purpose of grinding out the game before I start making the video, but that's besides the point, Airship Assault has a variety of problems ranging from this issue could probably be fixed by introducing something or making a compromise to holy shit, why the fuck did the developers do things the way they did? This is like Horizon Blue all over again.
I get shot once and 3 of my limbs are bleeding.
There's 3 main positives, 3 main negatives, and 1 mixed bag criticism I have for Airship Assault: class balancing, weapon balancing, airship gameplay, progression, unlocks, movement, and finally Crescent IO. Starting out with Airship Assault's strongest suits, the balancing of the classes is just stupid good. All of the classes synergize with each other in one way or another, and none of the classes have any equipment or playstyle that renders each other obsolete. To give an example of class synergy, pilots are probably the best way to showcase class synergy. Raiders come equipped with a glider, right? Fuck my arm. This glider is better than the parachute since it's a lot more controllable than falling down a straight vertical line. It obviously helps a player glide across the sky. This is really good teamwork, because if a raider asks a pilot to drop them off over the enemy airship, 9 times out of 10 the pilots will actually comply with your demands and fly over the airship for raiders to glide in. The same goes with raiders and crewmen, since both classes can defend the airship from the enemy team, even though the raiders isn't exactly intended to defend an airship. Speaking about the guns, it's great to see a game that manages to strike a fair balance in the arsenal of all 3 classes. While the crewmen do get LMGs, sniper rifles, or the god-fearing breach rifle that just fucking erases enemies' atoms from existence whenever I use it.
Hi there.
I fucking love the breach rifle. This thing is too damn good.
Crewmen aren't exactly suited to attack. Yeah, the LMGs have great firepower and can suppress enemies, but what the hell are they gonna do against a raider with a grenade? Pilots don't exactly have good weapons, but I think that's kind of the point. The strongest weapons is the plane they spawn in and they live and die by it too. fighting each other in aerial dogfights or bombing land infantry with regular bombs or just using rockets. The game modes that involve the big airships, assault and ambush, are probably the best the game has to offer. Since all classes revolve around being active towards the defense or attack of an airship, it creates an interesting relationship dynamic between player action and how it shapes the outcome of the game as the match go on. The fate of an airship is entirely dependent on how competent a team is at defending or attacking, as even a team with a clear altitude, firepower, or even competence advantage can still get screwed over by a single pilot who happens to have rockets, and said team have some extremely stupid crewman who doesn't understand the concept of the repair wrench. While that mostly describes the average assault match, Ambush's one is a unique case where Greenland is purely on the defensive while Volgray are the ones being the aggressors. Normally you'd think Volgray would have the advantage because they have raiders, but the truth is Greenland still has a very strong chance of winning if the team has a secret trick known as repair fucking everything. Even if Greenland has a good team, Volgray can still win just by coordinating mass assault waves of raiders attacking the pillars directly instead of going for the boilers. So really what makes the game mode that involve the big powerful airships unique is just how there's so many different ways to approach them, either be it wiping out the blimps out of existence or by defending to the last man. So that's great and all, with Airship Assault having a lot of good things going for it. Personally, I think the developers deserve a ton of credit for their work, but that being said, there's still a lot of questionable choices made in the game. Right off the list of bad things about Airship Assault, there's the progression system. Why can no game developer on Roblox ever get this shit right? You basically have to grind your ass off just to unlock something small, like a nuke grenade, since it's all level-based progression unlocked to specific classes. Then immediately after that, you have to grind even more because, a gun you wanted actually needs 2 classes to be on the same level. Good fucking luck, because you're going to spend the next week of your life just playing a class you might not enjoy playing as just so you can get a lever action shotgun that acts more like a rifle than an actual shotgun. This plays into another problem, the economy. It's a bit of a different situation compared to my last video on Scorched Earth, where money was easy to earn but everything was just too expensive to even buy anything. Here, money is comparatively harder to earn since you have to get it by completing directives or leveling up. Sure, it gets easier when you get to a certain point, but earning bonds is based on class-specific levels too, so good luck trying to grind bonds before you reach level 12, because everything is still too fucking expensive for a new player to afford. The biggest problem about the economy and progression system is at its worst when you remember about the victory points that I talked about earlier. Yes, you have to win as a specific team to earn those points, and no, joining a server where a team is winning within the last few minutes of the game doesn't count, since you have to spend at least 2.5 minutes in the game to actually get that win to count. This is why I ended up switching teams so often, especially on fucking IO, because an ungodly amount of Redamoran weapons are locked behind their team's victory points. Why? Why did you even do this? Couldn't you have just made it a cosmetic replacement for the non-Redamoran weapon counterparts for the starting LMG and SMG instead of locking it behind a fucking currency you can only get by winning? Because I'm sure as hell never trying to win as Redamura 6 times just to unlock a Redamoran submachine gun that Grenlin and Volcrate just gets with bonds. Adding on to the progression system, while thankfully most of the equipment are level locked or victory points locked, despite it being incredibly annoying, some weapons just feel pointless to unlock and also to use. I have no idea why I used the officer pistol for so long before realizing it was kind of a piece of shit. While not all weapons start out being completely worthless the moment you unlock them, thankfully, they also suffer from the problem of weapons becoming utterly irrelevant the moment you unlock a better one. Sure, the Michelle gun is a very good LMG, but while it kind of makes the Hudson and Grinnell machine guns pointless to use since the Michelle gun is far more deadly and accurate, though not fast enough to outclass the first LMG unlock, ironically enough. When it comes to other weapon categories, there's really no point in using the T44 SMG anymore when you get the Officer SMG, which is basically a carbon copy of the T44 except with the added bonus of actually being accurate. Also, unlocking the lore entries is just... why? Some of them are easier to unlock, sure, like the mysterious entries that you have to go out of your way to find for yourself, but then you have the weapon or faction-based lore entries that requires you to shit out kills or wins like there's no tomorrow to unlock the entries for. Usually, I'm really interested in a game's world-building lore, as I was with Centaur, Horizon Blue, and Guts and Black Powder, but Airship Assault locking lore entries to arbitrary progression bars is just pure fucking stupidity and makes me completely uninterested in it. I get they're trying to make a system akin to Battlefield 1's Codex, which explain World War I history, but unlike Battlefield 1, Airship Assault's unlock requirements is basically the equivalent of starting out a cooking lesson then being asked to make pufferfish fugu on the first day. As in, it would either take a stupidly long time, be extremely hard, or it's just too much effort. Also, the lore is just bland. It isn't boring and does have some interesting moments, that being the neutral countries entry in the world map of the lore, but if the rulers of the 3 playable factions in the game, King McCullen for Greenland, Kaiser Wolfric for Volgray, and Emperor Yoshida for Redamura, all basically have the same motivation of I got prosperity for my country and I could put my good. It goes from painting them in a sympathetic and compassionate light to, did the writers just fucking copy and paste a character template? I actually complain about this in a Twitter thread, which you can see here. It felt like Airship Assault has no stakes in its conflict and the war is completely washed and sanitized, aside from one mention of subjugating Greenlanders to hard labor after Volgray won a war against them. Also, before someone tries to point this out in the comments for the 2 millionth time, yes, I know lore doesn't affect gameplay in any form of way. I'm only covering lore because I think it's interesting to cover it. If I think the lore of a game sucks ass, I'm going to say so. Now, aside from that minor tangent where I bitch about the lore, this next part is entirely subjective and might be up to a lot of different interpretations, but I'm going to say my piece for this, and I just think the game is a little bit slow. To be fair, I am a PC player, which makes me predisposed to setting my FOV to 9 trillion and play as if I'm having a stroke. In case you don't understand that, imagine playing Minecraft on Quake Pro settings. Even on low FOV though, it isn't hard for someone to realize that it's taking a stupid long time to sprint across a bridge on Io, or sprinting to a damaged part of an airship for that matter. I don't get it. The vehicles feel fast to use, the planes feel fast to use too, and the tanks have pretty appropriate speeds as well. Even the boats on Io are pretty fast, but with all that being said, why does player movement feel so sluggish? It kind of clashes with how most gunfights between PvP players are so fast-paced, where bullets are flying all over the place and shotgun users have to run around and get close to their enemies to blast them away. Yet it's limited by how fucking slow everyone walks and sprints, making it feel like every single player in the game is struggling from the opposite problem of Phantom Forces, where instead of everything being too fast and full of sweats, everything is too slow and full of people trying to be sweats. This is especially bad in a game mode like Io, which exclusively takes place on the Redamura map, because if you're playing as that team, running and walking is what you're gonna be doing for basically the entire fucking match. And it feels so fucking slow! Speaking of Io, at the start I went into the script absolutely hating on Crescent Isle as a map and game mode. The more I played it though, and the more I switched teams Italy style, Crescent Isle went from one of the most agonizing maps to play on to it just being okay. It can be enjoyable if you're winning, but if you're losing, it feels like you're being actively punished for having a team that inhales dumb cunt juice on a daily. The map is such a unique divergence from Airship Assault's regular formula. It's a creative way to introduce conventional land warfare mixing with World War II style naval landing, as well as introducing Airship Assault's lore in an interesting way, which actually reflects a few parts of World War history where Japan took Pacific territories from the Germans, during World War I at least. Regardless of team-sided bias, the entire map in game mode is way too dependent on having a whole team cooperate together, even more so than the teamwork reliant gameplay that I was praising earlier. If Volgray's team sucks, then Redamura is likely to steamroll them into oblivion. If Redamura's team sucks, then Volgray just gets to sit around and do nothing, which was something that actually happened to a game once I was playing on. There's also a few deciding factors that tip the scale of the map way too heavily, like whether Redamura's gunboat is still active or if Volgray has tanks or not. If Redamura's gunboats is still around, then they can just keep nuking Volgray defenses with mortars that on occasion just go through walls for some reason, and it's easily the most oppressive thing in the entire map. But if Volgray manages to get a tank literally into any point, especially on the last fortress one, then the chances of Redamura managing to assault the point without backup, plane bombings, explosives, or a tank of their own, then they might as well just go fuck themselves, cause they've basically lost the game. What sets this problem apart from regular Airship Assault gameplay is that in a game mode like Control or Assault, small groups of people or a single person is enough to create big advantages for the team. Blowing up the boilers room walls as a pilot can make it exposed to crewmen using cannons, raiders gliding in, or even for other pilots to attack it with rockets. All of these can help a losing team either get a trump card, no relation to the latest US election, or if already lost, then it lets them throw in a draw instead of a total defeat by pulling a martyrdom move and bringing the enemy team down with you. For Io though, you can't get a draw and you can't even tip the scales even if you bomb the shit out of one side, because if that team is able to pull their shit together even once, and it has to be the entire team rather than small groups of people, that's going to cause problems for the other side. Also, I mentioned earlier about the shovel tool that players can use to build enough crap that would make Majima construction jealous. That's also the deciding factor. If Volgray can spam enough steel hedgehogs, then Redamura's tanks are basically stopped dead in their tracks if the Redamuran foot soldiers don't do shit about it. If Redamura can build a tent on a good spot though, just see for yourself. This is why I can't exactly decide whether I love or hate IO. It's all over the place, and while I do love some chaos in games, this is chaos that only negatively affects the team that's on the losing disadvantage. Airship Assault is a game based on interwar era technology heavily inspired by an old ROBLOX game called Zeppelin War. Airship Assault, as the name suggests, heavily involves aerial warfare where one team, consisting of 3 distinct classes, must cooperate together to take down an enemy team's airship. This game is mostly good. It's good fun, well balanced, and has engaging gameplay. Cooperation between teammates are highly encouraged, and unlike most multiplayer games on Roblox, a lot of people seem willing to join in on any mass team efforts to help win the match. The aerial combat is also just as fun as the land combat, which further facilitates team coordination since while the 3 classes all have specific roles and tools, they can still all help tip the scales of a match through whatever means necessary, be it defending or attacking. The problem with Airship Assault though lies in the somewhat odd design choices by Project Combat. The movement is slow, contrasting the intense gameplay in vehicle combat, while progression is terribly slow and locked behind a god-awful economy system that forces players to win matches in order to unlock new weapons that may or may not be useful either. Crescent IO though has such a massive mixed bags of positive and negatives alone that it's hard for me to distinguish whether it's bad or good, making that map in game mode the only thing in Airship Assault that I can't think of whether I like it or hate it. Ultimately though, Airship Assault is a very fun but flawed experience. This is a game that's definitely worth supporting, though a lot of its game design choices are still questionable and should have had some changes considered to make it better.